Hey everybody, Clay Archer, CEO DPC Technology, and it's that time again. We're gonna take every Ubiquiti camera, we're gonna throw it up on a test rig, we're gonna check them out, we're gonna poke and prod them, and we're gonna rate them from the worst to first. We have every camera except for the AI DSLR. It's a really niche camera, it's $2,500, and I don't think very many people are looking at it. So we have every other camera, and we're gonna throw them up on a test rig inside, test it day and night, and then throw it up on a test rig outside and test it day and night. We'll also quickly test the sound from each camera. We're gonna look at things like quality of image, feature set, form factor, and the like. And I'm not gonna go into all of the features of each camera, but there will be a link to our blog post down below where all the details of each camera, how I rated them, what all their features are compared, if you want to check that out and get really down into the details. The last time we ran this a couple years ago, that was a really popular video, and there was a big separation from the worst camera to the first camera. The good news is in the evolution of Unifi, I think they really don't have a dog camera anymore. There's not easy cameras here to say, this doesn't make sense anymore. But there are some financial reasons or form factor reasons that ones will be disqualified. But if you buy any of these cameras from Unifi today, I think you'd be happy with the output that you're gonna get from them. That doesn't mean that there aren't ones that are superior, and we're gonna dive into that right now. So from our perspective, we are a managed service provider. So these are our opinions, and take that for what it's worth. We are commercially putting these into our offices. So we have a certain expectations from our client that you might have at home or if you're doing it for yourself. Just real quick before we jump in, we did have some issues setting up the AI Theta. One of the Thetas that we tested came BOA, and it took a couple weeks to do that RMA process. So during the test, we're gonna check it out and see, was that a once-off issue or are we having more issues with the Thetas themselves? So starting at number one is the G4 PTZ. Right now, it's on sale for $999. It's normally $1,800. It is a pan tilt zoom camera with incredible optics. The second camera is the AI Pro. It's $499. The next most expensive is the $499 older G4 Pro. It is a pro camera with optical zoom as well. The AI Bullet at $399. It is the AI version of the Bullet cameras. Also coming in at $399 is the AI 360 Pro. It is a 360 camera. The next in line is the G5 Pro. It is $379. It is also a pro camera with optical zoom. Next in line are the AI Thetas. There's 6 AI Thetas right now, but you can't buy all of them individually on the website. You have to kind of mix and match, which is kind of strange. So for the pros, coming in at $329, you can get the AI 360 kit, which comes with a hub and the AI 360 and a couple of different mounting options. At $328, you can buy the AI Theta Wide, AI Theta Tele Pro, both pros there, and a hub. You have to buy those individually. You have to buy the lens and the hub separately. Then, this is where it gets a little even more strange. The AI Theta 360 comes in at $299, but you get the AI Theta Wide lens. So you get 2 lenses with 1 hub, which makes little to no sense. So if you add a second hub at $199, all of the hubs are the same, whether it's pro or not pro. Each one would end up being $250. That would be $199 for the hub, $299 for the 2 lenses and a hub. So that would give you 2 cameras for $500 or $250 each. You can't not buy the AI Theta Wide lens individually. It only comes as part of that kit. Very strange. And then there is the AI Theta Tele. If you added that to a hub, it would cost you $258. Again, I don't think that's really going to be their final strategy on these AI Thetas. I think they're kind of finding their way on how they're going to bundle this kit. It really makes little to no sense. Next one is going to be the G4 Bullet at $199. Then we have the G5 Dome at $175. Next, we have the G4 Dome at the same $179. Then we just have the regular G5 Bullet at $129. We have the G5 Flex at $129. Then we have the G4 Instant, which is a Wi-Fi camera at $99. Then rounding out the lineup are 2 older G3 units, which is the G3 Flex at $79 and the G3 Instant, which is another instant camera at $79. All right, everybody, let's jump right in. It's a little crazy this year. If you look at the screen, there are 20 cameras we are reviewing here, and obviously can only show 16 on a screen at any given time. So I've broken it down into a few different categories, and we'll kind of go through them in logical order. Basically, we're going to look at the image, we're going to do a little pixel peeping, maybe look at the eye chart, see how the different sensors look in the different form factors, and kind of decide whether the the cost differences are valid. We'll jump into a few of the features, but we're mainly going to look at the image quality here. So let me start off by saying all of these images look really good. I think at this point in the evolution of Ubiquiti's cameras, they've really got a lot of good cameras. So if you looked at my last review where there were some real underperformers, there aren't really that many underperformers in this group. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I call this category Dome, Flex, Instance. So it's the domes, the flexes, and the instance. These are the ones I would typically put into an office setting. So they're going to go into a hung ceiling or reflective ceiling in our case. They're going to look nice in an interior, and they are kind of designed for that function. So let's start off with the G4 dome. Both the G4 and the G5 dome have a 5 megapixel sensor. The G5 sensor is what they call HDR. And you can see this image is an awesome image. I mean, anybody would be super happy to have this image. It's covering a really wide area. You can see the lake in the background. The image looks really nice. But if you compare it to the G5, it's a little on different little axes here, but you can see the colors are a little bit richer. Image in the background looks a little tighter. Although, you know, the difference between the two is minimal. Like if I didn't tell you this one looks a little bit flatter than the other one, you wouldn't really notice it. But, you know, two really, really good options here. You'll see if I go into the cameras themselves, we'll go into G5 dome here. And let's bring that one up, and we'll go into the G4 dome here. We'll bring that one up. You can see here that the only difference between the two in settings is there's a lens distortion setting that you can enable on the G4 that doesn't happens automatically on the G5. So in settings here on the G4, you can see that's all pretty standard stuff. And it's also got person, vehicle, and auto detection on it here. And in the G5 dome, same detections. You know, very similar cameras. They work very similarly. I think there's not much in it between the two of them. Let's go back into our view and let's look at the flexes. You know, honestly, these flexes are really, really nice cameras. Again, the G5 Flex with that same 5 megapixel HDR sensor that is in the G5 dome. Really nice, rich image here. Looks really good. You know, I can see it on the eye chart pretty well there. You know, none of these wide angle ones are going to be particularly great on the eye chart, but they are there to get this wider shot. So you're giving away a little bit of resolution zoomed in. So that's the G5 Flex. The G3 Flex, you know, it kind of pales in comparison. The wideness of it is not quite as wide, and it is a little bit more milky than the G5 Flex is. The G3 Flex is also just a 2 megapixel sensor. So, you know, there's quite a bit of difference between this image and this image. You can see the width here. I'm seeing this wall in here. Much richer looking image, much wider looking image. Honestly, the G3 Flex on my last video was one of the superstars of that rating. You know, it was a couple years ago, and you can see how quickly things have moved along there. So obvious winner there is the G5 Flex. There's a big jump up from that 2 megapixel sensor to the 5 megapixel HD sensor. And that leaves us just with our instance. Again, the G3 Instant is a 2 megapixel sensor, and the G4 Instant is a 5 megapixel sensor. Not the HDR, but you can see even without it being the HD sensor, it's really got a quite nice image. I apologize for the framing on the G4 Instant there. I lost the mount for it and I kind of had to jerry rig something, but it looks decent for what it is. So, you know, of those two, I think the G4 Instant obviously is the big winner. If you go into the settings on, let's go into them on the G3 Instant, you're going to see under events here, it's only got on motion events. And so if I go to a G5 Flex, let's just say, we're going to get those person, vehicle, and auto detections there. So the smart detections are not available on any of the G3 lines of cameras. Similar setup on all these ones. There's not really that much that you can do differently in each one of these. So what you're giving up with the G3 line is less resolution, and you're giving up some of your detections there. So I will say, just quickly going through them, the stars of the show for me are the G5 Dome and the G5 Flex. And if you've watched my previous video, that comes over under as no surprise. I will say the G5 Dome versus the G4 Dome versus the G3 Dome, they've really kind of refined this. The form factor of the G5 Dome is nicer, the build quality is nicer, the image quality is nicer. We're not getting the milkiness that we would have in those previous ones at night. Obviously, we'll do that nighttime session here in a bit to show you what it looks like at night. But yeah, I think that's a real nice representation of what you're going to get out of it. So let's quickly go on over to the bullets. Obviously, we probably wouldn't do bullets inside the office like this. Typically, the bullets are for outside, but there are certain instances where they may be appropriate inside if you're really looking for a bunch of details. One of the party tricks of the Pro lines is this ability to zoom in. So you can see right now on these images, they are all zoomed in, and you can see just the real resolution that you can get on something. Maybe you had I don't know, a jewelry case or something, and you really wanted to make sure you had every last little detail on it. You can see that the resolution on these is really amazing. We'll go into the cameras themselves and play around a little bit, but just right there, you can see how sharp that is on the G5 Pro and the AI Pro. But the last comparison, how much I really like the G4 Pro, and it's interesting to see even how far that's moved on in this next couple of generations. Just real quickly before I go back over there, I just want to show you kind of the throw that you have on these Pros. So I'll do it on the AI Pro. You can see it's quite a pretty stark difference there, how wide it can go and how narrow it can go. And obviously, wherever you zoom them, that's actually physically happening. So it happens to every view that you have of that. So let's go through these really quickly. Just a quick looking at this page, you can see the G4 Bullet and the G4 Pro do not have the dynamic range that the other sensors have. So how that kind of manifests itself is the richness of the colors and kind of how it's handling light and dark. There's not a lot of direct sunlight, as there really wouldn't be in an office, but it is getting towards sunset here, and you can see the sun's coming through the front door and hitting this. It's not bright enough that it really would distort or blow out an image in any camera, but you can see how well it's handling. But just really quickly, this G4 Bullet and this G4 Pro, just the basic look of it, you can tell that they are looking more milky, less contrasty than the Pros. That being said, the G4 Pro's sensor and the G5 Pro's sensor are both 8 megapixel sensors. Again, G5 being what they're calling HDR, and the G4 being just the 8 megapixel sensor. The AI Pro is also an 8 megapixel sensor, but it is a little bit larger actual sensor. So the G4 and the G5 Pros are half-inch sensors, whereas the AI Pro is 1/1.8 inch sensor. So it's a little bit bigger. You can't really say that it's that much more quality as you zoom in, but I'll zoom in on all of them. We'll kind of see which ones we like there. The AI Bullet is a 5 megapixel sensor. The G5 Bullet is that HDR 5 megapixel sensor, and you can see a little bit more richness, and the G4 Bullet is a 5 megapixel sensor, so it's a little less resolution on it. But great look at the image. You can see the geese going by on the lake right now. I mean, it was such a margin call on where you want to be on these cameras, but the fact that the G5 Bullet has a bigger sensor and is less expensive, it's kind of a no-brainer to go to the G5, and you can see the detail in there is nicer than it is in the G4. Eye chart, same thing. Not that you're really going to be reading eye charts from these types of bullet cameras, but the G5 sensors, the 8 megapixels, just handling it better. They're probably not the best thing for reading something small. If I was going to read something small or really need the fine details, I probably would go to the Pro because I would get the zoom feature, and the optical zoom is really amazing. As far as width goes, these bullets obviously are going to be more zoomed in. So you can see in comparison here, I can see the wall in the Pros, whereas I can't in the Bullet. So obviously the Pros are more expensive, but they do let you go to that width. Again, the optical quality of the Pros is superior because you are able to do the zoom. The G5 Bullet being less expensive than the G4 Bullet makes it a kind of a no-brainer that you would go with the newer camera. The cool thing about the AI Bullet and its party trick is that it's doing more detections. So let's go into the AI Bullet and we'll look at license plate detection, which is awesome. When we go to the G4 Bullet, we do not get that option. We do get vehicle and person detection, and in the G5 Bullet, we again get vehicle and person, but we do not get the license plate detection. So I think that license plate detection is going to be a big feature for the AI Bullet, and a big, probably something that makes more consideration. Than I really think the image quality of all of them is pretty comparable, but obviously the price of the G5 Bullet is there. If you need smart detections for license plates and really anything that they're adding to these cameras, you're kind of future-proofing yourself with the AI bullet versus the G5 bullet. That being said, you're paying more than double for that camera. So your mileage may vary there. You know, that's going to affect my ratings of the two cameras. I will also say that the G5 bullet is just a little bit wider than the AI bullet. You can see halfway in the image there. I can see, you know, a little bit wider in this image here. We're kind of splitting hairs there, but those are the subtle differences that make your buying decision one way or another. Obviously down below, we'll have a link to a blog post where we have all the specs written out in a table. Let's go back into the pros real quickly and I'll show you those detections as well. So in the G5 Pro, if you go into smart detections, you all got vehicle and person, and you do not have the license plate detection unless you go to the AI Pro, which has license plate detection. You know, that's going to be a great feature for outside pro cameras, especially with the zoom, because you're going to be able to zoom in on a driveway area and just see everybody that's coming and going, which is probably going to be a deciding feature for a lot of purchases. You are paying a premium for the Pro. The Pro is $499, the G5 Pro is $379, and the G4 Pro is $449. Obviously, at this point, it probably doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense to buy the G4 Pro anymore. It's been a valiant member of our tech stack for a while, but obviously, time passes on and the G5 Pro being less expensive and higher quality makes no sense to buy the G4 Pro at this point in time. I'm going to quickly go back into the pros again, and I'll bring up the G5 Pro and the AI Pro. Quality of your image, so just look at the eye chart, and you know, that's just amazing. You know, that's really, really nice. I mean, that final line, I can see, you know, completely everything on it. I mean, it's really impressive. I'm looking at the G5 as well. You know, for me, there's not that much in these two images. They're both really impressive. You can see down to that final line, no problem whatsoever. LEF, OBF, CT. I don't know how that's going to translate on YouTube, but it looks really good here. I think you'd be very happy if that was the image that you got. And that one, really good images. I mean, like, you can see all these details, everything that's on Jared's desk over there. You can see that QNAP over there and a couple of M.2 cards on top of it. And you can see it inside everybody's bags. I mean, it's impressive stuff. And I think anybody would be really happy with the image out of both of those. It really comes down to whether you need license plate detection or you don't. And so those are really your two considerations there. The one camera that we haven't shown at all here, and it's an outside camera. You can see it's getting towards sunset now, but this, my PTZ, I really love my PTZ. It's been out here for quite some time, and it is just rocking and rolling. The image on it's amazing. The zoom on it's amazing, but it really doesn't kind of fit into this inside comparison. So we will go back on and take a look at that when we do the outside comparison tomorrow. If you want to see what it looks like inside, I have done a full review of the PTZ where we had it inside. I didn't feel like it was really, you know, I mean, obviously it just kicks butt and takes names and is insane inside, but I don't know very many people that would use one inside unless you were in a nuclear lab or something and really wanted to keep tabs on something. But yes, it does work inside, and if you want to check that out, it's in a previous video. All right, so our final group is the AI Thetas. I've done a full review of all of these compared, so if you want to check that review out, again, these are all of them compared. So we have the AI Theta Pro Wide, we have the AI Theta Pro Tele, we have the AI Theta Tele, we have the AI Theta Wide, and then we've got the 360 Theta and the 360 Pro Theta. Obviously, the Pros have that same kind of quality difference looking than the regulars do. They are all actually using the same sensor. So if you go into the Pro and bring it up and you look at, let's go to the Tele because it'll show it a little better. You see the eye chart. This looks really nice. Just coming back and looking at the others that we've been looking at, the domes, the instance, flexes, you know, this image looks really nice in comparison. I think anybody would really be pretty happy with this image. You can see the detail in the background. There's a gooseback out there doing its thing. And you can ripples on the water. It looks really nice, and I can read the eye chart pretty well. And if I go into the Theta Tele, the major difference, and this is something I talked about in the other video, is just that the sensor looks the same, right? The sensor quality, it looks pretty much the same, but you get the 16:9 look in the Pro, and you get this 4:3 look in the regular. And in the Tele, it's actually just kind of looks like they just cut it off. Like you can see that the field of view on this Pro Tele is just much wider. It's zoomed in to about the same scale, but these black bars are just omitting what you're doing. But what's weird is if you look at the Pro Wide and the Theta Wide, it is about the same width. So look at where the monitor is there, look where the wall is here. But what you're getting actually is you're gaining on the regular Theta Wide. You're getting more in the ceiling. Look at this white noise speaker up here, and you don't even see it in here. And at the bottom, you're seeing a little bit more of the Cat6 cable that Sean has stacked up there. So like, you're actually getting, it feels like you're getting more on the wide and you're getting less on the telly with the regulars versus the pros. So interesting look there. And while they're very similar 8 megapixel cameras, I know the pros is the 1 1/8. It doesn't say what the non-pros is, but I think it's a different 8 megapixel sensor. A little bit more contrasty in the pro. You know, that is a differentiating feature there. Again, we'll go into the cameras themselves. They all have the same hub. They all use the same hub. So I think 99.9% of the features, other than the optics of the lens, are coming from the box, so they don't really change that much. What I will tell you is that the 360s do not have license plate detections, but both non-pro and the pro have license plate detection. So if you wanted to put them in a window or somewhere where you could detect a license plate, they both have that feature. Really, at the end of the day, I think that's a little bit of form factor difference. You know, obviously that's a decision to be made. Do you want the smaller non-pro or the little bit bigger pro? And there's slight qualitative differences in the image itself. This 4x3 is a little annoying to me, especially if you put it, like you can see behind me, I've got the viewport going. The viewport puts the black bars on the side, and I think that's somewhat annoying because you're giving up some real estate. But you are gaining a little bit of view in the Theta Wide. So it's a margin call on which way you would go there. Maybe the price difference is what you're looking at, but for me, I think in both the wide and the telly, that the pros are a little bit of a winner. It's not as much in it for me in the 360s, simply because it's interpolated from the sensor. Again, the Pro maybe looks a little bit more dynamic range, but not really. And honestly, you know, if you're super duper pixel peeping here, you can say this or the other, but I don't know how much of it's the lens and how much of it is the sensor and how much of it is the software. There's just less in it for me there. You know, if I was doing the Theta Pros, I probably would stick with the Theta Pro so that all the cameras look the same. I also really like the install kit for the pros, and I think that, you know, for a building that's being built, if you have a hard ceiling, I think the install on the Pro 360 could look really amazing. But that being said, the Theta 360 is smaller, so even a little bit smaller. I just think that the kit that comes with the Pro is a little bit nicer. Also, at the end of the day, I think 99% of what's happening in these cameras is coming from the hub. I don't think you're gonna see any developmental difference between, you know, if you buy a Theta versus a Theta Pro, is the Theta Pro gonna be supported longer? Because it's all going through that standard hub, I don't think that's going to make a difference. So it's a kind of a plus just for the longevity of that system. Boom, and just like that, you're back here and it is nighttime, and we are going to take a look at all the different cameras. Really quickly, there is a little bit of an issue with doing nighttime comparisons with a bunch of cameras. So I'm going to show you a few of the IR emitters and how powerful they are. But for the bulk of this test, I'm just running with the G5 Pro's IR sensor on. You know, all of these cameras, except for the AI Thetas, have IR capabilities. The Thetas do not have an IR emitter, nor can they see anything in infrared. So all of the other cameras have IR emitters turned off, but their IR sensor turned on, and the G5 Pro is providing the light for this beginning of this comparison. I'll go through and I'll show you a couple of the other weaker emitters. Obviously, the G5 Pro with the image enhancer has one of the stronger IR emitters, and so I'm going to use that here. You know, it may not be as strong as the PTZ's is outside, but it is a relatively strong emitter. So let's jump right into the bullets real quick, and we'll do a quick comparison. So obviously, the G5 Pro with the range enhancer here is on, looks good. Beautiful. It's coming on axis, obviously, because it's the one doing the emitting. But you know, just a quick glance through here, you can see from the G4 Pro to the AI Pro to the G5 Pro that the AI Pro really, its sensor is very, very sensitive to light. Now, one other caveat here is this is not a completely dark office. If you watched my AI Theta reviews, this office never gets completely dark. There's a light in the reception room that is behind these cameras that is always on. You can see a little bit of the double image here. There's two light sources on the shadow of the eye chart. And if you look over in the top right corner, that's actually me in my office recording this video. But if you walk out into the office right now, it is pitch black to the eye. And when we get to the AI thetas, you'll see a little bit of what it looks like there. That being said, the pros, obviously their images are really good. But if you compare the AI Bullet to the AI Pro, the Pro is just killing it. Same thing if I take the G5 Bullet to the G5 Pro. The way they're handling contrast. So, the G5 Bullet is a perfect example. Like, this is really overexposed, whereas the G5 Pro is settling that down a little bit. But even beyond that, the AI Pro is, man, like the darks, there's visibility into the darks and the lights aren't as blowing out. So, there's not as much visibility in the darks and the lights are blowing out. Again, all these cameras are so good at this point that I'm really splitting hairs. We're really pixel peeping. But the G4s just are less contrast. There's losing a bit in the shadows. Sean has his little Christmas scene back here that's on in his room. You can see barely what's going on back there. You can tell that something's there. But there's just much more detail back there. Not that it zoomed in very well, but you can just see more details at Sean's desk. Same thing with my room over here. You can actually see the umbrella for my dome light. A very similar performance as you would think here. There isn't really a standout. There isn't really a big loser. Again, the G5 Pro and the AI Pro, just like it was during the daytime, their IR sensitivity is superior to the G4s, and the AI Pro by a good margin seems more sensitive to IR light than any of the others. Same thing with the bullets, probably a toss up here between the AI Bullet and the G5 Bullet. The AI Bullet's definitely handling a little bit better, but you're paying more for it. So I don't know, I think both of those are really usable images. I do think the AI Bullet's a little bit better. Again, the AI Bullet has license plate detection and the G5 Bullet does not. Really quickly, I'll turn off the G5 Pro's emitter, and I'm going to go into the AI Pro, and we'll just see what its emitter looks like. Really not much of a difference in light emitted. Obviously, it's a little bit further off axis, so it's on the AI Pro is on one side of the rig that I've got there, and the G5 Pro is on the other, so you can see the shadows going in the other direction now. But still a good image. The Pro itself is AI Pro itself is still beating everything. The G5 looks pretty similar to it before. I do feel like the G5 with the enhancer has got a little bit stronger emitter, but we're probably splitting hairs here. Maybe we'll see a little bit more when we put them outside and we can see a better throw on everything and off into the distance. But let's go into the domes and the flexes and the instants. Again, we're all using the AI Pros. Well, let me go back into I think the shadow's a little bit more attractive when we use the G5 Pros. So now we're back to the Pros, the domes, and the flexes. And so obviously the G5 dome, I think, is really kind of going to be the winner here. I mean, that was probably a little bit of a foregone conclusion. G4 is off axis here a little bit, but at night, I don't know that there's that much in it, but this is just a nicer image. There's just better clarity in it. The G3 Flex at the bottom of the line obviously is going to struggle with the contrast, and it's going to get a little bit more blown out in the highlights, and a little bit it's going to fall off quicker in the darks. But that's not a bad image. I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs at this point. G3 Instance, the weakest of all of them. It's a Wi-Fi only camera. You can see sometimes it's streaming a little, when it's focusing in. But when you go back into playback on this, the image looks really, really nice. It's just kind of that stream while it's on Wi-Fi that is a little rough on it, but not a bad image. G4 Instant, man, that's a pretty good image actually. Look at the eye chart. It's handling that really well. Check out the difference in the eye charts there. Like, this one's struggling with it, and then this one is just bam, right on it. So big win for the G4 Instant. Obviously, that's probably the superior of those two. G5 Flex, man, this is just a powerful little camera, man. It really does perform pretty well. It's not doing as well in the eye chart as the G5 Dome is doing, but it's close. It's close. It's struggling a little bit more. I would definitely give that the G5 Dome over the G5 Flex. But man, what a great little camera. In the difference between the G5 Flex and the G3 Flex is pretty stark.
I think it's handling the contrast a little bit better, and the resolution is just better. Clear winners to me is the G5 Dome, the G5 Flex, and the G4 Instant, and probably just kind of depends on what your use case scenario and where you're putting them, as to which one I would choose there. What I will do while I'm here though is just show you the power difference between like the IR emitter in a G5 Pro, which is obviously a super expensive, super nice camera, and the cheapest ones, which will be, the Instant. So let's go to the G3 Instant just to do a quick comparison on what an IR emitter strength kind of means. And watch, there'll be no difference. Haha. But there will be. You could just see as it was resolving there that it's just darker. It's still not bad, but it's not getting as far into the scene as the stronger ones do on the Pros. But I mean, it's decent. There's nothing really wrong with this. And honestly, I think it's performing pretty doggone well. It can't compare to a G5 Pro on both cost and number of IR emitters. So anyways, pretty decent. I'll show you one more. Typically what we would see in an office is that we would have several domes, typically G5 domes that were in an area like this in this particular office. And in fact, we do in this office. There's 4 cameras in this office, and all of their emitters are on. They're all facing each other, so they kind of, they light up the room together. You can see it's a little bit stronger there. You can see it was that they resolved it. It popped a little bit stronger on a G5 dome, which is typically what you would use in this situation. In this room, we have a G5 dome up in this corner, a G5 dome up in this corner, and one up in this corner, and they all kind of cross. And that's really all I have to say about the domes, Instants, and Flexes. Again, if I was going to rate them, I'd say the G5 dome is the clear winner, the G5 Flex is a clear winner, and the G4 Instant if I was going in the Instant category. Those 3 are outperforming the other ones in this category. Again, on the PTZ, we're not going to do anything with it today. Tomorrow we're going to put everything outside, and it will be part of that comparison. So that brings us over to the Thetas. As I mentioned before, this office is very dark. If you were to walk out right now and there was something in the way, you would trip over it. You would not see it. And the Thetas, the original Thetas, non-pros, are doing a pretty faithful recreation of what it really looks like in there. Like you're gonna see a little bit of light on the walls where you can kind of see where things are, and you can see me back here, and there's some cast there, but like all the other areas you really wouldn't be able to see. But this is really the amazing part about these Theta Pros. The sensitivity to light on these sensors is pretty amazing. And you can see the reflection of the light in the lake. You can see Sean's got a little Christmas scene over here, and you can see the details of it. You can see the upper cabinet for him. You can see Adrian's upper cabinet. There's a little green glow over there. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And on the wide, you're even getting it from side to side. Again, in our office, and right behind all the cameras, there is an always-on light in the reception room. There's a light down this hall that's always on, and I'm filming over here. And you get all this other phantom light here of a QNAP doing this replication and the phone being on. But if you watched our other video on all the Thetas compared, this nighttime vision is it is the real reason to go to the bigger Theta Pros. And same thing in the 360s. This image is almost unusable except for where there's a lot of that light coming in from the reception room. But this image, man, it's pretty usable. And as I zoom around on it, it's pretty awesome. I mean, in this area behind this glass wall, there's no direct light on it. That's just residual light that's coming from further down the hall. You can see the light sources over that way. Pretty impressive compared to this. Now, this isn't as good of an image. If I needed true night coverage, this isn't as nice as any of the other ones with IR on them. But if I was looking for the aesthetic, and I wasn't banking on this as being the main feature, and I just wanted to be able to see if somebody comes into this room, could I identify them? And I think you could. Now, would it give a perfect mugshot of them? Probably not, but you would know, you could probably tell their size, their sex, their clothing and all that kind of stuff. And it's in color too, so you get a little bit of that as well. You can see the yellow boxes here. Because it's not IR, there is a little bit more color detail. So the clear winners, Theta Wide, the Theta Tele, and the Theta 360. So if nighttime or low light captures are something that you need in your system, those 3 are the only ways to go there, because I really feel like this is pretty much unusable. Really quickly, I wanted to add one last view here. What I did was I turned on the cameras as they would normally be in this room. So you can see what it looks like in this room. I've turned on the IR in this G5 dome. There's G5 dome over here, and then the lights in this corner. So this is representative of what everything would look like if it was in a normally lit IR. So it's getting the benefit of adding some contrast in the back of the image. So that's the G5 dome with it. That's the G4 dome with it. G5 Flex with more. G3 Flex with more. AI Bullet with more light. The AI sensors just suck that up. The G5 Bullet, really nice. Just give you a little bit more details of the room. You can kind of pause that in each situation if you want to kind of see what it would look like in a room like this. Again, the AI 360s, they do not see IR, so it doesn't matter. Now we'll go to G4 Instant there. G4 Pro. The G5 Pro, man, that looks like a really good image when it's got some of that backlight there too. And same thing with the AI Pro, man. Ooh, that looks like daylight in there. I mean, that's amazing. But you can see the light cast there and the light cast there. So just wanted to give you a little bit more real world. I know I was in that test condition where I turned off all the emitters. Now, I didn't turn them all on here because if you turn on all 20 emitters, it would just be blown out and bright. So, but I just wanted to show you what that room would look like practically if you had them all on. All right, so we're back, and it is now 4:26 on a winter's afternoon. You can see the sun is low in the sky. These are pretty challenging daytime conditions for these sensors, and I'm gonna go through real quick, and just like we did on the inside, take a look at all the different sensors compared. So just for giggles, I threw the Thetas up there. Obviously, you're not gonna use Thetas outside. I think this was a little bit of a, just because it's already on the board, I'll throw it up there. And typically, these are not cameras that I would use outside. If I did, I probably would put them really in a secure place under an awning. We have an awning just to the left over here. You might want to put one there. But anyways, let's go through them real quick. I do want to apologize. The names in the top here are off a little bit. When you move the hubs in cameras and you don't put the same camera back in the same hubs, it remembers the name of the hub. So this is the non-pro wide. This is the Theta Tele non-pro. This is the pro tele, and this is the pro wide. Doesn't make a lot of sense when you look at it. I will tell you we had another casualty. This is the second of the Thetas in this test and the other test that I did that have malfunctioned. And I think this one is just the cable. I mentioned before that we had to RMA one of the hubs before. The cable seems to not be working when we moved it to the roof. So I don't know if that's operator error, but honestly, the same camera when it was inside, we had to unplug it and plug it a few times. So, I'm giving the Thetas kind of a little bit of a question on durability. Obviously, that's going to be something that's going to be an issue if you mount these in a strange spot in a ceiling or whatever. There are just more pieces to it, so there's more stuff to malfunction. So we won't have this is not the AI Theta Pro. This was actually the Theta Pro 360, and this is just the regular 360. This is not the Pro, although it says the Pro. And honestly, I'm pretty impressed with the little 360. I think obviously this isn't a wonderful image, but the cool thing about it is, you dewarp it and you move it around. If I dewarp it, you can see the rest of the cameras on the rig that are next to it. But if you dewarp it, you can see, it's a pretty useful little image there. This isn't something I was leave as my main camera, but it does actually function out there. The sun is pretty harsh in it, and you can see there's not a lot of contrast in it. It's struggling. And this is probably the comparison of the Theta Pros that's really good, is you can see how the sun's blown out in that Theta Wide, and then the Theta Wide Pro, the sun is its own little spot, and you can see it's resolving license plates and stuff a little bit better than is just the regular Theta. So, again, this is just a bonus throw out there. I don't think anybody's really going to use it in this situation. This is the Theta Tele, regular Tele. This is the Theta Pro Tele. And yeah, you can see Daniel get into his car. I think that's a pretty appropriate image. There's a little blue cast, I think, on this Theta Pro Tele that looks a little bit off-putting. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's just a little bit of contrast issue there. I don't know. Interesting to see there, though, this car is about to move and take off. I want to see if we get detections on that car as well, or license plate detections on that car as well. But that's the Thetas. Obviously this is not really part of the test per se, but I just wanted to throw them out there because, hey, if you can, why not? So, and then I'm going to go to the inexpensive ones. This is the Flex Pro Instant group here. I'm sorry, there's actually a G4 dome in here as well, but this G5 dome, actually we do have a G5 dome underneath the awning there. You can see it's doing a pretty good job into the sun there. I mean, it's not great, it's not perfect, but if you have a spot where you want to throw a G5 dome under an awning or something, I think you could do it. I think the image out of the G5 Flex may be a little bit better, but it's close. You can see these the G5s have a little bit more of the orange warmness, and the G3 Flex Instant and G4 Instant are a little bit cooler. But again, you could throw these out there. They're going to do it. These aren't the cameras that I would typically use for outdoors, except for the G5 Flex and the G3 Flex. I think those are the ones, if I was going to put something outside, I would probably put those through, and maybe the G5 dome as well. But anyways, we didn't bring a G4 dome out there. Sorry about that. I didn't even think about that because it's up here. But I think the G5 dome is going to outperform the G4 dome anyways. And I've done that outside in a previous comparison. So sorry about that. Didn't even realize I did that. But I think they're all doing an adequate job. I don't think any of these images, by the way, is that amazing. I think they are all what I would call adequate. Can I see over the Life South building? I probably really can't there. I can see basically because I know it is money pages I can see, but not amazing, but okay. So let's go to the real people that we're testing this on, which is going to be the bullets. And these are the bullets, and you can see they're handling that harsh light much better. These are very neutral looking images. I mean, that's a really good image. I can see the license plate there on the Prius really well. So let's go through them one by one. This is the AI bullet. It's the latest bullet, and it's got all the AI features built into it. That's a nice looking image. Let's compare that to a G4 bullet, which is the oldest bullet. I think it's a better image for sure. We're getting a little bit of blown out, a little bit of a sun flare there, but we're obviously pointed a little lower as well there too. I mean, I really wouldn't complain about either of those images, but the capability of that AI bullet, I think, is going to definitely take the cake there. Let's go to the G5 bullet, which sits right in the middle there. Again, a little warmer, but I think this is a pretty good image as well. I can see that license plate really easily. I can make out the details of the other cars in the parking lot. Pretty decent image and in pretty challenging conditions there. I'd be pretty happy with that image. Let's go to the G5 Pro and the AI Pro. So these are the more expensive sensors here. They're going to be much wider. Sorry about the mounting there. We got a little bit of the awning there because it's so wide. Again, a really nice image. I think it's handling the light relatively well. All of the G5 sensors seem to be the warmer of the sensors. You can see it here at the Bullet and the Pro as well. So every G5 camera that we put up here has got the warmer background. We'll go to the AI Pro. This is the most expensive and kind of fanciest camera out there. Again, a great image. It's a little cooler, but the detail is great. Obviously going to be reading that license plate quite well. No issues. And the G4 Pro, which was the big winner 2 years ago in our competition, it's actually fallen down a little bit here. It's still great. I mean, you would not be upset with this, and I would not replace this camera if it was out in front of my office here, unless I was just, it's me and I'm testing out cameras. I probably will replace my G4s with AIs and G5s. But, for the test, I think that's a pretty decent image, and I don't think anybody's going to complain to that. It's right into the sun at a really bright part of the day, so I think that they all are performing. I think this has been the theme with the cameras in this test is really beyond the ones that are not in their right use case. Like you could tell that this regular AI Theta 360, that's not really the right use case for it. But every other image here, I mean, pretty good. Even this Theta, that's not too bad. This Theta, better. The Pro is better than the regular Theta, but that's handling right into the sun decently. You would be able to see somebody walking by there and identify them and be pretty happy with it. The Theta Wide, that's a dang good image. Now, I'm not going to put that out in the elements, so it's a moot point. But the rest of these cameras are, they're all really good images. I don't think from image quality there's any real deciding factor which one of these images is better than the others. I think they're all really nice images, and I think that you would be happy if they were out there and you use them. But let's go to really the kind of the party trick here for these is the detections. So You can see, I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff going by out there, and so you're going to get a ton of detections here. And I think they all do a decent job on just regular vehicle and person detection. But kind of the party trick of the AIs are that they can see license plates. So you can see that we have a couple of our Priuses. We have HJR and NPL that were in those two parking spaces as we were putting these cameras up. But you can see pretty quickly that the cameras do a nice job. This is Marty leaving for the day, actually. And let's just watch through this detection. He's going to get in the car and go. And it grabbed that as it was going by there. Pretty cool. So that's a pretty cool of a quick little detection there. Now, obviously, you know, the big thing about license plate detection is you need to place your cameras in an appropriate spot because they have to be able to see the image and get the image. This is Marty leaving again. And you're going to see with the overlay here, boom, it picks it up and it sees that he's leaving in that car. Pretty cool stuff. They pretty much all grabbed it. It was all the AI guys. And, you know, it's pretty cool to see that the AI Thetas grabbed it and we're cool with it. You know, you can see him moving again. We're in Florida, so you don't have to have real license plates. So it's only going to detect what it can see, obviously. So I had him back that in. You know, if I was going to be really working on this, Sean installing the cameras as Michael is pulling the Prius in. If I was going to actively use license plate detection, I would kind of put that, you know, aiming right at the exit here. And that brings me to this point. I have not done the PTZ. This is the PTZ. It's been up here forever. It's trusty, tried and true. It does an amazing job. Outside, this camera is just phenomenal. It's just for fun, you know, stretch its legs. I'm using the keyboard and the mouse here to do some zooming in, but that Life South building across the way, the blood donation building, wait till that to get into focus real quick and boom, like it's unbelievable. That is a long, long way away and you can see pretty much everything you need to see. I mean, it's phenomenal. I can even go just for fun. Let's go zoom out a little bit and I'm gonna go like, let's go over here. We'll go right focusing on the money pages. This front element is just totally exposed to the sun right now. And you'll see it just cuts right through it and boom, we're across the street. Give it a second to finish what it's doing. And I mean, literally you're across the street and it's just impressive. It's impressive. You can even, you know, kind of look in the building across it. It's crazy. So, you know, people that are looking for the PTZ are looking for the PTZ. I think the update, you know, my review last time, they did not have tracking feature on, and auto tracking is just, it's awesome. So let me just go to detections real quick and show you. Let's just go to that camera, just the PTZ. All right, so it sees Margaret walking in front of the camera. It grabs her, it follows her. Her and Sketch walk around. We just went into night mode. It switched over and it's still following her. And boom, they walk into the building. A couple seconds later, it will reset itself. For my use case scenario where the way we have it here, I couldn't be happier with it. This is a sidewalk people go back and forth on, so it picks people up. If people walk that way, it will follow them all the way down the way. The tracking, the auto tracking was a killer feature for me. And obviously I bought that really early and I didn't have a lot of use case scenario. It just kind of sat in this orientation all the time. But now with that tracking, I'm really happy with it. That is that for the PTZ. It does not have license plate tracking. You can see there in our detections, the only ones that pick up any license plates are AIs. All right, real quick, I'm gonna jump in and just do a quick sound test on the cameras as they're outside. I have Sean and Michael talking in front of them and just kind of listen to it in real world. Can't quite understand them there. Go ahead and we'll try. Sounds better. AI Bullet is definitely beating the AI Pro there. Okay, so that is the AIs. None of these ones up here have sound, so we'll go to the G4 Bullet. G4 Instant. G4 Pro. Maybe too much gain. We're getting that lawnmower in the background. And let's go to the G5 Bullet. Much better job handling the blower. G5 Dome. The G5 Flex.
I have more control. I can just keep doing the same shot over and over again, and then refining that.
I can hear them, so that's usable. And the G5 Pro. This gain is pretty low there. I can hear that Sean's talking about disc golf, so no surprise there. Honestly, you know, there's not a lot in it on all of them. Some of them the gain's a little higher, some of them the gain's a little lower. I mean, it's a real margin call on sound on these cameras. We'll take that for what it's worth. You know, a completely unscientific test would show you the difference in the sounds on all the cameras. All right, here we are again, and it is now nighttime. I have all the cameras up. They all have gone into IR mode. That can go into IR mode. As I watched them go through, it was pretty funny. The G4 Instant was the quickest to go into IR mode, and the AI Pro was the last to go into IR mode. I will tell you that AI Pro, its sensor just in and of itself can hold on to darkness a long, long time. It is very similar to these Thetas where the HDR abilities of the AI Pro was pretty amazing. Real quickly, I will jump into these Thetas, which obviously, again, I don't think these are the appropriate use case for outside, and they don't have IR emitters. They are just sensors. But even the AI Theta regular, it is dark out. There is not light in the sky there. It is picking up just a very, very faint the glow there. And if you go to the pros, it looks like daylight out there. And there is ambient light here. Obviously, there's street lights and money pages, and I have a green sign on our office, and there's another light here, and there are two lights you can see casting from lampposts. So honestly, I think this is pretty much the image you're going to get in my parking lot all the time. And the sensor that is in that Theta, that Pro, it's nice, man. That's awesome. The zoomed in one across the street, I mean, I could tell that's a blue car, and it's pretty impressive. Again, I would never use it out there, but man, that's pretty doggone good for no IR at all. So right now, there is no IR sensors on in any of the cameras. I obviously have the PTZ off axis. It's on the other side of the building. Its IR emitter is on. Look in the background of the other images as I move the PTZ. It is, you can see the light moving in the background there. It's pretty amazing. If I move it away, you'll see that you don't get that light anymore. See the light in this corner here? That is all coming from this PTZ, and it will shine a light a long, long way. By far, this is the strongest IR emitter of any of them that I have. It is pretty impressive as an IR emitter. Again, the PTZ is probably just a niche camera, and it's not super important to everybody, but it is a heck of a camera, especially at night. It is pretty impressive. I'll go ahead and go to that Life South building again like I did earlier. And you can see even at night, man, I'm zoomed in there, man. I can see people inside the building. I can see the individual blinds. I can see the plant. I mean, it's impressive. The optics in that camera are next level. Go ahead and close out of that. So the IR emitters in all of the cameras are off right now. So I will go through one by one and turn them on. Let's start first with G5 Pro with its enhancer. Wait for that to pop on there. You can see in all the cameras, IR from one's going to affect all of them. You can see it popping on there, and you can actually see it in the image of the G4 Instant there. But really strong, really awesome. One of the things that the G5 Pro has with the image enhancer is it has a light on it. So if somebody were to walk in front of the image now, it would pick them up. It would actually turn off the IR and go into color mode. Super nice image there. In our area here, I don't necessarily and I'll go ahead and do this one more time where I turn it off. I don't necessarily think that the IR emitters are going to make that big of a difference in our instance, simply because you can see it turn off again here. To give you a little before and after what those images look like. They're still pretty good images for everyone. It's not certainly as bright as it was with the IR emitter on. These are, again, now just using ambient light, no emitters. I'll go into, I'm not going to do every one of them, but I'll go into the Pro here. Boom, you can see the reflection in in the lights there of the Prius. But, you know, again, I don't know necessarily in a lit area like this that it's all that super important. I'll do this just for giggles. The difference before and after, it's blowing out the license plate a little bit more when it is on, because obviously that's reflective material. But you know, with the lighting that I have in my parking lot, it doesn't seem like it is the be all end all. Let's go ahead and turn on the AI bullet. So we'll bring that one up, and you can see the image there. Again, you know, there is more light in it. I probably could see a little bit more in some details, but I don't think that's necessarily a world beater. Before we move on and just kind of pixel peep on a few of these, I'm going to go cameras and see if they make any difference with the IR on and off. One of the things on the roof there, we're having a little bit of intermittent performance with the Wi-Fi cameras. They kind of come and go. You can see that IR emitter is on there now, off again. And, you know, a little bit of difference. It's not going to change the world there. You know, I think this IR emitter on the G3 Instant is probably pretty tiny anyways. You're getting a little bit more reflection in the taillights there, but nothing that is going to be a world beater. Let's go to something that I really would put outside. I'd probably put a G5 Flex outside. Let's see what that IR emitter looks like. Let's bring it up there. Sorry that it's a little close to the soffit there, but let's see what we get here. That actually made the image worse just because I got a lot of stuff in the foreground there, and it's reflecting off that and compensating. So, you know, your mileage may vary there, but I'll turn it off again and we'll see what it looks like with it off. That actually looks a lot better with it off because it's not lighting it there. So both on and off, I think these are pretty good images. Let's go and pixel peep. I'm going to go back and I'll turn on a couple of them just to kind of flood a little bit more light in there. You know, let's take a look at the 360 just for fun. Obviously, this is going to be facing down, so it's probably not going to do much of anything. And we'll apply filters there. Yeah, again, that's going to light the wall up a little bit more. Let's go into my view here where you can see, yeah, that just made it more upset by turning that on. So that's an example of one where probably that AI 360 should be in the middle of a room, and that's where it works best and not really on the edge of a building where it's just reflecting off the building. So I'll turn that off. Let's go in and I'll turn in that AI Pro because it's got a really nice IR emitter, kind of simulating what it would look like if you had one coming from one direction and one coming from the other. It's kind of probably to me the best real world situation there. Now I got one coming from the AI Pro, one coming from the G5 Pro. You can see the reflections in those lights. That is a pretty good representation of how you would light the parking lot. So let's dive in. The regular Thetas, I think they really suffer here. You know, there's a lot of noise in that image, and I would say that is not a good image. AI 360, it's doing pretty decent there. The sensor is covering too much area for that to really be super effective and really good. Same thing with the Theta Wide and the Theta Zoom. The Theta Zoom, maybe you could get away with it, but I don't think the sensitivity in those is good enough. You can see the light is almost gone from the sky completely now. But I will tell you the pros, if you stuck them in the window or you put them in a soffit somewhere, that's a pretty good image at night. This is no IR, this is all just visible light, and it's doing a great job of capturing that image. You can see the sky here. I mean, it is pitch black outside, and it's still holding on to some color in the upper atmosphere, but that's not affecting the cars in the foreground at all. And you could tell, you know, you can see the green logo, the DPC logo. This is really good. These cars that are going by, you know, I'm seeing the red and amber lights. I can see that's an SUV. I'm really impressed. Let's move on for the Thetas though, because that's more of just kind of a fun experiment. I don't think you would really use there. A G3 Flex, I think that's probably a decent little image there. It's having trouble with the light on the soffit there, so I'm probably not being completely fair to it. But to be honest, the G3 Flex, I think is just outshined by the G5 Flex. So if I was doing the G3 Flex, I would go down to the G5 Flex, and you can just see, I mean, even the same challenging conditions there, but it's just resolving everything else a little bit better, the driveway and and everything. So, again, I think the G3 Flex is probably a big loser here just because the G5 Flex is a better camera. G3 Instant, again, this is not another one that I would put outside, but hey, it's seeing stuff out there. G4 Instant, again, manageable, but the mounting of them's not exactly right. I don't think those 3 cameras are something that anybody's really gonna realistically put outside. Let's go over to the G4 Bullet, which is the oldest of the bullets. It looks decent. If this was on my wall already, I wouldn't take this one down. G4 Bullet versus G5 Bullet. The G5 Bullet it's resolving everything a little bit better. It's a little wider. I'm getting a little bit more of the car. I'm getting the front of the Ranger over here and all the way over to the edge of the driveway, which, it's just a little tiny bit wider. The detail and things is just a little bit better in the G5 Bullet. I don't think the G4 Bullet is where I would be at this point. And then we'll go over to the AI Bullet, which is even a little bit better. Now, this isn't quite as wide, but the detail is better, and we get the detections with it. So, I wouldn't take down the G4 Bullet if I had the G4 Bullet outside, but I would definitely choose the G5 Bullet over the G4 Bullet, and I probably would choose the AI Bullet over the G5 Bullet just for the auto detect. But if I'm looking at the bumper here, I do think the G5 Bullet is probably holding its own, if not a little bit better, and it's a little bit wider. So, your mileage may vary there. It's a margin call, but it is truly there. So, again, sorry for not putting the G4 Dome outside, but I don't think that anybody's really going to put the G4 Dome outside at this point. So let's go to the G4 Pro. This was the big winner in my last time contest. I've said that a couple times. Again, this is still a really good image. I don't think anybody's going to complain about this image. If somebody's walking in the parking lot here, you would be able to identify them without much issue. But I will compare that to the G5 Pro, which, pretty similar image. I don't know that this is necessarily killing that image. It does have the enhancer on it, which is nice, but it is less expensive than the G4 Pro. So it's going to just win on price. And then we'll go to the AI Pro, which probably is my winner this year just for the license plate detection. And, on the license plate detection, the zoom, I think, is the killer feature for it as well. I think what I'm going to do is put this camera, when we're done here, on the edge of the building facing back towards the driveway, zoomed in, so that everybody that leaves the parking lot will get their license plate recorded. The only last one here that we have not taken a look at is the G5 Dome, and it does a pretty doggone good job. Truth be told, I have a G5 Dome under the awning over here, and it works pretty well at night. Is this any different per se than I would say, look at the Making Computers Work for Dentistry since 1995. If I go to the G5 Pro, pretty much, I'm looking at pretty much the same thing. Now, obviously, it's not completely apples to apples. It's not the fairest of fights because every one of these is mounted a little differently. I'm not using the IR emitter from each individual one. But that all being said, I think that realistically, if you put any of the bullets outside and the G5 Dome, and, I don't know why I keep coming back to it, but that Theta Wide is pretty killer. It's not weatherproof, and it's, like I said, with the Thetas, there's 3 parts to it, so there's more stuff that can go wrong. But like if I had a window and a little elevation, I don't know that I wouldn't put this out there. Finally, don't have any visible light in the sky, so that is pretty much darkness. But I will tell you, it has been dark for a long time, and that's done a pretty nice job. One last thing before we end this, I'm gonna go to the AI Pro, and I'm just gonna show you how nice this sensor is as well. I'm gonna go always disable so that it doesn't go into night mode, and show you how sensitive this sensor is as well. It is very much like those Thetas where, I think it actually looks better than in this case. I think it looks better without night vision on than it does with night vision on. And I might disable it. I don't know. You tell me. You can pixel peep as well. I can see the license tag there. I can read it much better. I can see the colors. I feel like, if I was looking for something with detail, it almost looks better that way. Just for giggles, let's go ahead and do it. The AI Bullet, same thing with the AI Bullet. Like, isn't that maybe better? I don't know. You be the judge. I will just quickly to compare to something else. Let's just go for like the G4 Pro. It's doing a pretty good job too. It's doing a really good job as well. I don't know. You know, in this lit environment, maybe not going into night mode is the better call. There's just something about the quality of that Pro sensor and the dynamics there. I don't know if it's going to translate on YouTube, but that green is really green, whereas that green is kind of sort of green there, but maybe I'm splitting hairs there. And honestly, I think that Theta is probably the best of them all. Anyways, the newer sensors, the AI sensors, definitely have better dynamic range. There's no getting around that. Okay, but that's outside in a nutshell. I think, you know, again, all of these cameras are doing really well. You know, there's not a biggest loser here. I think a lot of this is coming down to features, form factor, weatherproofing. So if you decided to put one over the other, I think it's going to be a really margin call. Unless you need those features. So we'll go back in the studio, we're gonna wrap this up, and I'm gonna rank all 20 of these cameras from worst to first.
All right, so I'm gonna start with our bottom 5, and let me start off by saying there really aren't any losers in this. All of these cameras are really good. But if I were Ubiquiti, what I might wanna do is start to lower the price of our existing cameras. You know, as a camera ages, its value starts to go down. So let's just take, for instance, in 20th place, we have the G4 Pro. It is still $449, and it just doesn't make sense in the lineup anymore for anybody to buy a G4 Pro when the G5 is less expensive and it has newer features. So I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with this camera, but at $449, it's just not a real value anymore. I think this camera should be $349 or $249 to make it competitive, and people would still buy it. Next, we have the G4 Bullet. Again, the G5 Bullet is $50 less expensive and is a better camera, so it makes really no sense to buy that at this point in time. Then I have the G4 Dome, same price as the G5 Dome, and I would just go with the newer unit. The G3 Instant is in the same boat. You know, it's a G3 camera, and the G4 Instant is only $20 more, and I think is a superior camera. You're going from a 2 megapixel to a 5 megapixel camera. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you're just trying to find a $79 camera and you were gonna throw it in the corner of a room somewhere, I think this is an adequate camera. I don't think you'd be foolish to buy it. But for me, it really doesn't have a place here, so it ended up being our 17th camera. And then next, we have the G3 Instant, which was the big belle of the ball in our last review. I think it's still a great camera. I think the price is amazing at $79, but the G5 Flex is just a better camera at this point for a little bit more money. So that's it for our biggest losers. These were the really easy ones that we just kind of disqualified because the newer version of the camera is just better for either a little bit more or less money. So it just didn't make sense for any of these cameras to make the top 15. All right, so here we have the next 5. This is 11 to 15, and I'm gonna take a second here to go through the Thetas real quick because obviously a bunch of them ended up here just outside of the top 10. The issue that I have right now with the Thetas is one came DOA, and we also had several issues with having to reset cameras. The thought behind these AI Thetas for me, and the reason there's promise here, and I really like it, is interior designers, contractors that we do new office builds with are gonna really gravitate towards these because they're attractive. The problem with it is we have this device here that we have to put somewhere above the ceiling grid in a wall. Where are we really gonna do that? Is an inspector gonna come and see this box up in the ceiling and be okay with it? And then on top of that, if I have to reset it, how am I gonna do that? The resets we were doing were not just recycling PoE to this, it was actually unplugging the USB cable and plugging it back in. And where I see these going in are in more fancy installations where there's actually hard ceiling, or it's in drywall, where the access to the hub is not just gonna be lifting a ceiling tile and popping a cable in and popping it out. And even still, do you really want to roll a truck or tell a client they have to open up a ceiling tile to reset? I think there's some complication here. I do think these are good cameras, and I think there's a lot of promise. That's why they outranked some of the other units. But I think that Unifi has a little bit of work to do on reliability and the system itself to make us want to put it into an office. I actually reviewed this quite a bit with Sean. Sean's our project manager here, and he's not super confident with these at this point in time. That being said, you can tell by the process of elimination, the 360s made it into the top 10, and we'll talk a little bit more about them as we go. And at 15, I have the AI Theta Tele. These little guys are so cool. I mean, they're so small, it really is impressive. The thing about the Tele is it really is zoomed into a small field of view, and the low light performance is just non-existent. So when you compare it to the pros, the light performance of the pros, It just fell down for me there. I think it's priced appropriately if you need to be zoomed in. If you're looking at a piece of equipment or a door or something, I think it would be an attractive device to have there. Then at 14, we have the AI Theta Wide. It's the wider field of view. I think it's a decent little camera. Again, very poor low light performance. I probably would put in the Pro over the Tele there. Then at 13, we have the G4 Instant. It's a great little camera. I try and not like these Instants, and it performed really well. Again, it's kind of a specialty thing. I probably, if you have a spot where you want to put it on a cabinet or you want to put it in a garage somewhere where you don't have the infrastructure, don't have Cat5 cable, and you just want to go wirelessly, I think it's a nice little camera. It definitely was hitting above its weight, but it's not so good that it would beat out a G5 Flex or something like that. So next we have the AI Theta Pro Tele. Decent little camera. I like the form factor. I think it's cool. I don't know with this one that you would actually be able to get it into a wall or into a ceiling and have it point exactly where you want it to be. So you would probably really want to do this in a turret, so that limits what you would do with it. It did perform well at night, so that's a good plus for it. And at 11, we have the AI Theta Pro Wide. I think this is a really nice little camera. It just missed our top 10. Its low light performance really blew me away. I can't see this being mounted into a wall and seeing a whole room. It's wide enough to do that. Or you could buy the turret, and that's a perfectly good mounting solution as well. I will tell you, on all the Thetas that you see in the turrets were $29. They're an additional expense to the camera itself, but they all do come with the flush ball mounts in the kits. All right, so here we have our top 10, and at this point, these are the real cameras that we would put into a commercial building. Below this level, I think there are some that we might put in, but these represent what we would probably use here at DPC Technology for our clients. So let's just jump right into the top 10, and in 10th place, we're going to give it to the AI Theta 360. I really like the AI Theta 360. I think the form factor is great. What's holding this camera back for me is still the system. There's not enough wow into it for me to pick it over some other units, but I do feel like people are going to use this. Next, in 9th place, it's still outside, hanging on the side of our building, as it has been for a couple of years. I have the PTZ. It's a great camera. They're adding features to it. Finally, we have tracking. And for me, honestly, tracking is the feature. So it's able to pick up people, track them as they come into the zone that I have it focused on. So for my use case scenario, and I think for most people's use case scenario, it is a fully baked product at this point. Optically, it is an amazing camera. I use this camera all day, every day for the last couple of years. I think it's amazing. I think the ability to see something at distance, the ability to change the field of view, the ability to track, I think it's finally a kind of a camera that I would recommend to people. In 8th place, we have the AI 360. This is a camera I'm kind of a little indifferent to. Some people may have this way further up their list, and I wouldn't argue that point at all. To me, it looks a little large. I think maybe the Thetas have kind of warped my opinion there a little bit, pun intended. It does a great job. It dewarps. The image quality is admirable. But when I compared it to the other two, it didn't really separate itself that much. IR is one thing. If you need nighttime, it's definitely going to beat the others on that. Although, the image of the others at night, if there's some ambient light, wasn't that bad. So it is a decent camera. I like the camera, but it's not wowing me at all, and it deserves its spot at 8th place in my list. And next, we have the AI Theta Pro 360. What really does it for me on this camera, first of all, is $329, which is $70 cheaper than the AI 360 itself. And over the AI Theta 360 non-pro, it comes with the mounting kit. It's got what I call an old work box. You might call it a new work box. Basically, it's a mount that will go on the hard ceiling pre-construction or during construction. What that allows us to do is have the architect plan the ceiling, and when the contractor's putting up the hard ceiling, we go in there and we put in those old work boxes. Then the contractor comes back and sands and paints, and we're able to throw this in and put its little cover on it, and it's going to be in a perfect location every time. We don't have to fight with that ceiling or put fingerprints or all that kind of stuff up there. I think that's a really nice feature. I think the price is right. Again, the drawback to this over the AI 360 is that the hub is separate. And if there is an issue and you do have to reset the USB cable or anything, you may have to crawl in an attic, which is less than ideal. But I feel like the form factor and the look of it is something that interior designers and architects are really going to like. But if you said to me, Clay, flip-flop the AI 360 and the Theta Pro 360, I wouldn't argue the point. And that brings us to our top 5. And honestly, at this point, you could mix and match each one of these. I think everybody would have a different top 5, and every one of these cameras is deserving of being in the top 5. But with that, we have to make some choices. I had made some hard choices. And these are my top 5 cameras. Coming in at number 5 is the G5 Pro. I will tell you, this image enhancer is $99 that I have on here. It is a nice feature, but it is additional to the camera. But this camera is a great camera. You know that I was very up on the G4 Pro in the last review. I think the G5 is taking over that spot. It really is a really good camera. There's nothing really to complain about. It's got the optical zoom. It's got the image quality. Looks great at night. The image enhancer with the light on it is awesome to put out there as a deterrent. I really feel like this is an all-around great camera. And if you had it higher than 5 on your list, I wouldn't argue the point. So that brings us to top 4. And as always, a Flex gets in there. You know, the price point on these Flexes is really good. The image quality is great. It does almost everything, and it does it at a cheap price. You know, you can put it indoors, you can put it outdoors. It's got different mounting kits available for the ceiling tiles. These are just great cameras. So that leaves our top 3. And you know, these next 2 are ones that we use all the time. They're tried and true, they just work. And at 3rd place is the G5 Bullet. You know, it's just a solid camera. You just put it in there, it works. The price is right, the quality is good. It is just a good all-around camera. If you do not need license plate detection and you're on a budget and you want to put a lot of cameras around, this is the outdoor camera to use. That brings me right into our 2nd place camera, which is the G5 Dome. This is the camera we put in offices all over the place. It's got great image quality. It always works. Its reliability is superb. Ease of install is great. It is our workhorse, and it is in 2nd place. And with the process of elimination, I guess you could figure that out that I gave 1st place to the AI Pro. This may be a little controversial. What I like about this AI Pro is it does everything. The price is a little high, and obviously I would like the price to maybe be $100 less. But if you want a camera that can just sit outside and do a wide shot, a zoomed in shot, it can do license plate detections, and it will be able to do all of the latest things that Ubiquiti is throwing in to protect right now. It is the AI Pro. Now, I know this camera isn't for everybody, but it really is a great performer. And if you need license plate detection, I think it is the camera for you. Obviously, that's just our opinion, and we'd love to hear your opinion as well. So put your thoughts down in the comments below. I mean, obviously, you might say, Clay, that's ridiculous. You have a $500 camera. It's number 1. Nobody's going to buy that. I totally understand that. But, you know, as I put them all together and I just went through them, all the data, this is what we got. So I got to tell you, this has been so much fun. I learned so much every time I do one of these all camera reviewed. It takes a lot of time and energy, but it's so worth it. So please like and subscribe if you made it this far in the video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.